everybody! Today we're going to talk about death gods! Hey everybody, and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be talking about dark gods and goddesses. First off, one thing that I want to say is that's the last time I'm going to be saying dark gods and goddesses, because I want you to understand what I'm talking about, but I also want to stop equating darkness with things that are more quiet, hidden, shadow. I also want to say this is a segment of my class that I taught last year, and I'm going to be teaching online coming soon, called Walking the Shadow Path. So if you find this interesting, or if you want to learn more about this, stay tuned, that's coming. So I use the term shadow here, speaking to the Jungian principle of the shadow self. I'm gonna go way more into detail about that in my actual video that I will do on what shadow work is and what that dialogue means. But for the sake of this conversation and to keep this brief, the shadow is basically the part of our existence that we choose to stifle, ignore, not exalt, keep quiet, keep internal. So the shadow self is an attribute of that, of all the things that we do not like to acknowledge as humans, right? So that could be trauma, that could be certain attributes that we've been taught are not good, right? Lots of different things. So when I use the term shadow gods and goddesses, that's what I'm referencing. So any god that has to do with death, chaos, destruction, sex, war, anger, I mean, it could go on and on and on and on. Very underworld premises. I personally almost work exclusively with these types of deities. It's something that's called to me ever since I was really young. I've always been like, I mean, I'm a Scorpio rising, so like really, that's all you need to know. The gods that I reference as shadow gods and goddesses all have to do with the attributes that we don't exalt as humans. So I think a lot of people are really hesitant to jump into a relationship with them, or if they're in a circumstance and a specific god calls to them or goddess calls to them, they get nervous, or you feel as if you can't kind of walk that path because it feels really maybe hostile, or it might feel really scary, or you might have these ideas in your head that a lot of these gods and goddesses are kind of what the Christian pantheon creates of Satan, someone you want to avoid, someone you don't want to deal with, so like bad things, right? I want to offer this video because I think there is so much beautifulness in working with these types of god and goddesses, and I think really sometimes you just kind of need someone to open the door, or someone to say like, hey, I work with this deity, for other people to understand that they aren't these scary doom-bringing, death-bringing deities that so many people write them out to be. Okay, let's talk about different gods and goddesses, shall we? So I'm not doing this list just to give you a list. All of these gods and goddesses should be like researched thoroughly. I'm not just like listing them off so you can kind of just use them as like a checklist. I hate it when people do that. You don't list like Sekhmet and just be like, yeah, she's great for this. That's like, no. So I kind of, on that note, I guess I would say. So these are gods of, I have a list here: death, dying, chaos, war, internal spaces, divination, creation and destruction. They are outcasts, gods of sleep and dreams, and healing as well. So kind of the first thing that I want to say about gods and goddesses in this regard is that I would not take them lightly. I don't think anyone takes gods and goddesses and deity worship lightly, but I do think there is an element of respect that comes with working with these heavier topics. There is part of me that kind of almost wants to like warn you, like don't dabble, like, or don't like joke around, right? But I don't want to offer you that fear, right? I want you to feel as if you can have conversations with these deities. However, in my experience, these are not deities that you want to go to be coddled. For example, I remember a long time ago, I had a very like motherly relationship with who I consider Demeter now. I didn't call her Demeter at the time, but she was very much this earthen goddess. And I would have these conversations with her when I was having really bad depression. At the time, I started researching and speaking to Hecate because I was really fascinated by her. I mean, who's not? Look, she's amazing. And so I was like, okay, another motherly figure. So I was having a really bad depressive day, and so I went to sit in my altar and I called up Hecate in the same way that I would have called up Demeter, of just like, I feel really sad and I just need comfort. I sat down, I called her up and I just was like, I'm feeling so horrible. And she basically goes, and? Do you need me for anything else? And I just am like, no. And then she turns around and walks away. And so that's not everyone's experience with Hecate, but I think that illustrates a really great point of like, if you're dealing with, think of this logically, if you're dealing with like a death deity, right? Someone that is about death, or Hecate specifically is about helping people cross over the uncrossable. She is the one who escorts those across crossroads, right? So I wasn't calling her for any of those reasons. I basically was kind of calling her to like catch up on a phone call. And when you're dealing with a death deity, that's probably not one of their priorities, you know? So I'm not saying this to offer you fear or to say to you like, take every one of these deities incredibly seriously. It has to be so serious and every ritual has to be like cloaked and stuff. However, I'm saying enter it with respect. All of these deities, honestly, any deity, you should enter into a relationship with them with respect. That way also, you are not just co-opting their energy. You're not co-opting their archetype. You're not engaging in, you know, appropriation of who they are as an essence and who they represent as an essence too. So here is my list of deities. So first off, we can start with the Greek pantheon since I'm kind of already swimming in that. We have Hades, of course, who I've already mentioned. We have Hecate, who I've also mentioned. We have Thanatos, who is actually the god of death. He's the one who's the Grim Reaper, who does the death strike, right? Medusa is someone you could work with. She may not be a goddess, but she has immense power. She has an immense story that you could research and find resemblance with. Persephone is also one that I work with. For me, I kind of have to work with her, and I identify with her a ton because I am a Taurus sun, Scorpio rising, so I understand her duality well. In the more Christian pantheon, you can work with Lucifer or Lilith. There's a really great book that I actually just recommended I'm going to recommend in my Instagram called The Holy Wild, where Lilith is an archetype that is taken up as this like badge of like strength as a woman. Especially in the face of everyone telling you what you should believe in. She is an amazing archetype, and I think so many people resonate with her story too. Norse Pantheon is one that I absolutely love to talk about in this regard, because Norse Pantheon is a little different in that all of the deities have both this like shadow and solar side, right? It's ingrained into them. So Loki is a really great example of the chaotic energy, right? So everyone kind of goes towards this like trickster, cunning folk, destruction energy that is Loki, because that's kind of what we've been told a ton. However, he is the change factor. There's something incredibly beautiful and incredibly solar and movement oriented and positive about what he does, because he is the one that enacts change. Yes, to so many people he's a troll, you know, but at the same time what he does is really beautiful and really illuminating, right? Odin is another one. He's one that I work with, where you can worship kind of multiple attributes of his, where he is all about being a cunning man and trickery and wisdom and, you know, five-dimensional chess kind of thinking. But at the same time, he also is this god of war. He also is this really powerful entity. He's the king, right? But then also he has this, not softer side, but he has this wisdom side where he's depicted as this old man who knows all, right? All of these are different attributes that you can access. Hell is also a really good example of an archetype that feels really like doom and gloom initially. Sorry, my chair's squeaking a shit ton. She is seemingly this like doom and gloom story because she is half a live woman and half dead. Initially you're like, you know, she gets sentenced to rule Helheim. Like, you can take that story, or you can think about the fact that in so many of the stories she's depicted as this outcast that no one really knows what to do with. However, where she is sent to Helheim, She is in presence with herself. She is allowed to be herself, both alive and dead. She is allowed to caretake those who no one caretakes. So she finds home. Really great character archetype that you just kind of have to dig a little bit deeper for. We have Inanna and Ereshkigal. Really amazing story, very analogous to the descent of Persephone, if you're familiar with that like whole storyline. Inanna, in order to claim her power, more or less walks through the 7 gates of hell in order to claim her own truth and her own duality, which is why it's both Inanna and Ereshkigal. In the Egyptian pantheon, we have Anubis, king of death as well. Very analogous to Hades, but really powerful deity with a head of a jackal. Sobek is another deity. Sekhmet, who I mentioned previously, deity definitely of chaos, but also incredibly powerful, chaotic, feminine energy. What does that mean? How can you embody that in yourself? Osiris is another one. Isis and Osiris is another descent story that is really interesting and has to do a lot with ego death and with your capacity to kind of shed that which no longer serves you, even though it might be painful, in order to ascend to who you are supposed to be. Salome is another goddess archetype who is all about empowerment and trusting what's inside of you, despite what other people say. Really amazing story that you can go with. Baba Yaga is another wise, elderly sage woman who follows like the hag archetype of the person who is ostracized but holds all of the wisdom. Really beautiful magic. Kali Ma is one that's calling to a lot of people. She's calling to a lot of people right now. The goddess of destruction. But in that, she is also a goddess of creation. She has that duality. But what I love the most about Kali Ma is that very much she is chaotic destruction. She's bloody and dirty and gross and not here for the male gaze, which I know is like a contemporary thought, but I just love her archetype because like she is about like blood and survival and like the ugliness of being human, and that is such a beautiful thing if you allow yourself to look at it. For going Celtic pantheon, you could speak with the Morgan, whom I personally love. We have like a relationship where like I just like see her across the room and like I tip my hat at her. Like I want to like work with her so bad, but I know we're not destined to. I just think she's so amazing. But she is the battle goddess. She is the raven. She is the triplicate of goddesses that basically takes care of like all stages of death. Really, really beautiful magic. Another one in the Celtic pantheon is Maeve, another battle goddess. A little bit more like diplomatic focus, and a little bit more wisdom and strategy based. However, super wonderful, really great power that you could access. Santa Muerte in the Mexican tradition, amazing. Love her as well. Really great deity. Is often depicted as a skeleton who is pregnant, so also has that duality of both death and creation. Papa Legba, really amazing crossroads deity. Last year I went to Drumming Up the Sun and I should have known it was a hanged man year for me, and someone behind us was singing a song, but they basically just focused in on singing the name Papa Legba, and it just felt like the entire year was infused with that, which I just love that story. He's amazing. If we're going for more Ifa tradition and African tradition, Eshu is a really wonderful trickster deity. He is the gatekeeper to the Orisha, or the gods. And he definitely has, you petition to him before you petition to any of the Orisha, because he is the one who is going to lend their ear to you. So very frequently when people work with anyone in that pantheon, you also work with Eshu because he's the gatekeeper. You have in that tradition Oya, who is the goddess of death. She dances with swords. She's goddess of graveyards. And I personally love her. She's amazing, and every statue I see of her is just breathtaking because she's always like in this like action pose with like literally dancing with swords. It's just so good. Usually like on skulls too. Anyways, Ogun is also a really great example. He is a blacksmith. So he is this deity of war. However, he's also this deity of trade. and skill and honor and passion for a particular trade that I think is absolutely amazing. Basically, that was just like 10 minutes of me fangirling over deities. A big thing that I want to articulate with speaking about these deities and talking about these kind of shadow aspects that so often we as humans reject or try and keep quiet is I invite you to question what these mean to you. So I work with death a ton, right? However, I don't work with literal death. I'm not a death doula. That's not where I'm supposed to go. However, I work with death in terms of transformation, and I work with death in terms of like ego death and letting go of the things that make you feel really small. I also work with a ton of warrior energy. So when I work with Odin specifically, I work a ton with my own health. I have chronic illness and I have mental health issues that I've been dealing for decades with. And so my work with him is about being a warrior in that regard, in making sure that I'm actually showing up for myself, my body, and that as someone who sharpens the sword of the mind so frequently, so to speak, I also really need to focus on my body as well because, you know, as a warrior, it is my responsibility to take care of myself first because if I am a warrior, I need to have faculty of my entire self. So that's what that kind of warrior energy means to me. So I invite you, when looking at deities in general or when looking at these specific deities that deal a little bit more with like more shadow-based stuff, ask what does that mean to you? How can you update it to involve your own life? If you're a warrior, like maybe you're in the military and you're actually a warrior, and like how freaking cool is that? That you have someone who you can honestly follow their archetype and feel supported in exactly who you are. Maybe you have your own battles that you deal with. Maybe you are a woman working in a male-dominated field and every single day you have to show up and put up with bullshit. Maybe that's your warrior status, right? Maybe that is your personification of Lilith, of being like, I know exactly what my path is and fuck all of you who think otherwise, right? These are really powerful and beautiful archetypes that center themselves in very frequently trauma-led experiences or experiences that are about complete and utter ego death in the face of trying to choose to live life, right? All of these can be transformed into your own language. When you start to investigate a deity, ask them to reveal to you aspects of themselves that you don't normally see when you read a book or you read like a mythology collection that features them. What might they teach you? And how can that actually connect to your own life as well? Really, at essence, what I'm trying to kind of advocate for is that when we enter into relationships with these deities that might be considered shadow entities, right? Or entities that might be a little harsher, a little meaner, a little more aggressive, what have you, right? When we enter into these relationships, what I'm more or less imploring is that you allow for multiplicity. All of them have multitudes. They have, Hades is my really great example, where initially you have a surface level that he is a god of death. But when you go a little bit deeper, you realize that he takes care of millions of all of the lives that have been on this earth. That requires discipline, that requires a allegiance to duty, that requires calm and centeredness. He is the one who allots justice and rules where they go in the underworld, right? So even if I don't even believe in underworld, even if I don't even believe in Elysium and etc., right? That archetype alone is something that I can follow as a human on this planet because yes, he is a person who caretakes death, but he's a person who caretakes justice as well, right? Huge, huge multiple level kind of archetype. Every deity has that, including deities that don't typically get painted as ones that are more shadow oriented. For example, the example I always use is Aphrodite. Everyone initially is like, Aphrodite is all about sex and love. She must be totally great. No, I mean, she has that attribute to her. But what is more terrifying and what is more power surrendering than love? What is more chaotic than love? What is more heartbreaking than love? Really what I'm trying to say here is that all deities have multitudes. And so as I'm equally saying, give, you know, death gods and goddesses a chance and get to know them a little bit deeper and in their multitudes, do the same for those that are considered more solar. Okay, I think this is a long one, but I'm really excited to share this information with you. Like I said, this is kind of a chunk of my Shadow Path class that my plan is to release sometime in hopefully spring of 2021. I'm really excited to teach it, so we'll see when it comes. But if you're interested in my work, please feel free to subscribe. If you have any questions or any deities that you work with that I left off this list, welcome to leave them down below. I love to chat about it and I love to like get to know new deities too. But I hope this helped and I will see you next video. Bye!